My beloved child, something about your love story is changing, and the part that makes this moment so powerful is that you may not recognize it at first. Your soulmate has arrived closer to your life than you realize, but this connection is not going to announce itself with a loud sign or a dramatic entrance. It may begin with something incredibly simple, a message, a meeting, a familiar feeling, a conversation that somehow feels different from every conversation you have had before. And before you decide that it is just another ordinary moment, pay attention, because there is something hidden inside that moment that you will understand only later. The person you have been hoping for may not appear exactly as you imagined. They may not arrive with perfect timing, perfect words, or a perfect story. They may arrive as someone whose presence makes you pause. Someone whose energy feels strangely familiar. Someone who makes you wonder why one conversation stayed in your mind long after it ended. And here is where your story becomes unexpected. Your soulmate connection may begin quietly, but the emotional impact can become impossible to ignore. There may be a reason your heart has felt unable to completely settle for ordinary love. There may be a reason certain connections never felt quite right, even when everything looked perfect from the outside. Perhaps you were being prepared to recognize something deeper, not perfection, but recognition. Not a fantasy, but a person whose presence makes you feel seen in a way you did not know you needed. So do not rush past this moment. The next part of this story matters because there is one detail about your soulmate that you may have completely misunderstood. But listen carefully, because this is where the story takes its first unexpected turn. Your soulmate may not be the person you have been trying to force into your future. They may be the person who naturally finds a place in it. There is a difference, and once you understand it, many old memories may suddenly make sense. You may have spent time wondering why certain people entered your life only to disappear. You may have questioned why one connection felt intense but never became stable, while another person barely seemed noticeable at first. Yet sometimes the strongest connection does not begin with fireworks. It begins with comfort. It begins with curiosity. It begins with the strange feeling that you can be yourself without performing for someone. Your soulmate story may carry exactly that kind of beginning. And there is something even more surprising. They may already have noticed something about you that you assumed nobody noticed. The way you become quiet when you care deeply. The way you remember tiny details. The way you give more than you admit. The way you sometimes hide your feelings because you do not want to appear vulnerable. Someone may have been paying attention to those details without telling you. That is why the next encounter, conversation, or message could feel different. It is not necessarily about a grand declaration. It is about a small detail that reveals a much bigger truth. Maybe they remember something you said weeks ago. Maybe they bring up a moment you thought they had forgotten. Maybe they suddenly ask a question that feels far more personal than you expected. And when that happens, do not focus only on the words. Watch the meaning underneath them. Because sometimes the person who is becoming emotionally closer does not say, "I am falling for you." Instead, they ask something that quietly reveals they have already started imagining you in their life. And now comes the part you were not expecting. Your soulmate may have their own unfinished emotional story, but that does not mean they are incapable of recognizing what is real when it appears. They may have learned from disappointment, distance, misunderstandings, or relationships that taught them what they never want to repeat. This is why their approach may be slower than your heart wants. But slower does not automatically mean weaker. Sometimes a person moves carefully because they finally understand the value of what they are approaching. And there may come a moment when their behavior changes before their words do. They may start looking for reasons to continue conversations. They may become more curious about your plans, your dreams, your past, and the little things that make you who you are. They may notice when your mood changes. They may remember what makes you laugh. They may begin sharing pieces of themselves they normally keep private. These details can look insignificant from the outside, but together they can reveal a powerful shift, emotional investment. And if you have been wondering whether this person could truly be your soulmate, do not look for one magical sign. Look for consistency. Look for genuine effort. Look for emotional honesty. Look for the way they treat you when there is nothing to gain. Because real connection is not proven by one dramatic moment, it is revealed through patterns. Yet there is still one revelation ahead that changes everything. The person you are waiting for may not simply be entering your life, they may be approaching a decision about whether they are finally ready to stop holding back. And when that decision reaches the surface, you may hear something you never expected to hear from them. There is a moment coming in this story when the silence between two hearts can no longer hide what has been growing underneath it. It may happen through a simple sentence, an unexpected message, an honest conversation, or a moment when your soulmate finally stops pretending that the connection means nothing to them. And when that moment arrives, you may realize why everything before it had to unfold differently. You were not simply waiting for someone to appear. You were becoming capable of recognizing the difference between attention and intention, chemistry and compatibility, temporary excitement and genuine emotional connection. Your soulmate may not arrive as the perfect character from an imaginary love story. They may arrive as a real person with imperfections, history, fears, hopes, and a heart that is slowly learning how to trust again. And perhaps that is what makes this connection so meaningful. You do not need a perfect beginning to have a powerful story. You need two people who are willing to become honest about what they feel and intentional about what they build. So if someone has recently appeared in your life and something about them feels different, do not dismiss that feeling too quickly. Notice the small moments. Notice who keeps showing up. Notice who listens. Notice who remembers. Notice who makes space for you instead of simply asking you to fit into theirs. Because the soulmate connection you have been hoping for may not be somewhere far away waiting for a dramatic entrance. It may be quietly unfolding through a person who is already closer than you think. And the next revelation is where this becomes even more personal, because there may be one thing your soulmate has been wanting to tell you, but they have been waiting for the right moment to finally say it. There is something your soulmate has been trying to understand about you, and the surprising part is that you may have no idea they have been paying this much attention. They are not only noticing what you say, they are noticing what you do when you think nobody is watching. They are noticing the little changes in your voice, the moments when you suddenly become quiet, the way you protect your heart even when you deeply want to be understood. And this is why their next move may feel unexpected. They may not approach you with some perfectly rehearsed confession. Instead, they may reveal themselves through a question, a memory, or an unusually honest conversation. Something simple could suddenly become deeply personal. They might ask what you truly want from love. They might wonder whether you still believe in a lasting connection. They might bring up your past and carefully listen to your answer. And beneath that conversation could be a question they are too nervous to ask directly. Could I actually be the person you have been waiting for? That is the hidden shift you need to recognize. Your soulmate may not simply be interested in you, they may be trying to discover whether there is a real future between you. And if you have been waiting for some dramatic proof, you might miss the most meaningful signs because they will probably appear in ordinary moments. A person who wants to know your future plans is revealing curiosity about where you are going. A person who remembers your smallest details is revealing attention. A person who makes an effort to understand your emotional world is revealing something much deeper than attraction. But there is another layer to this story, and this one could change the way you interpret everything that has happened between you. Think about the moments when your soulmate seemed distant, uncertain, or difficult to read. You may have wondered whether they cared at all. You may have replayed conversations in your mind, searching for hidden meaning in every sentence. But what if their silence was not the absence of feeling? What if they simply did not know how to express something they had never experienced before? Sometimes a person can recognize a meaningful connection and still hesitate because recognizing it makes the possibility of losing it feel more serious. That does not excuse inconsistency, and it does not mean you should chase someone who refuses to meet you halfway. But it can explain why genuine emotions sometimes develop quietly. Your soulmate may have reached a point where they are realizing that this connection cannot be treated like every other connection from their past. Something about you has stayed with them. A conversation. A look. A sentence. A moment when you understood them without forcing them to explain everything. Perhaps they have tried to distract themselves from thinking about you, only to discover that certain things keep reminding them of you. A song. A place. A random phrase. A familiar situation. And then comes the thought they cannot easily push away: why does this person still matter to me? That question can become the beginning of honesty. Not because destiny forces two people together, but because sometimes the heart becomes tired of pretending that something meaningful is insignificant. And your soulmate may be approaching that exact realization. They may soon have to decide whether they will keep protecting themselves from vulnerability or finally allow themselves to discover what this connection could become. Now, here is the detail that could make your entire story feel different. Your soulmate may not be preparing to enter your life in the way you expect, they may be preparing to enter it differently. That means the next stage could involve less chasing and more mutual movement. Less guessing and more communication. Less uncertainty and more clarity. Imagine receiving a message that begins casually but slowly turns into something personal. Imagine someone who once kept their feelings carefully hidden suddenly telling you something they have never said before. Imagine hearing your name spoken with a kind of warmth that makes you realize the conversation is no longer ordinary. It may not be a dramatic declaration. It may be one honest sentence that changes the atmosphere completely. And perhaps the most emotional part is this: your soulmate may have been waiting to feel safe enough to tell you what they really think. They may have wondered whether you would understand them or judge them. They may have questioned whether you still wanted them in your life. They may even have convinced themselves that the timing was wrong. But something can shift when two people stop trying to predict the outcome and simply become honest about the present moment. That is where real connection gets stronger. And if your soulmate begins opening up, pay attention not only to what they reveal, but to what they ask you in return. Their questions may tell you exactly where their heart is moving. They could ask whether you are seeing someone. They could ask what kind of relationship you want. They could suddenly become interested in the future you once thought they ignored. And one particular question may catch you completely off guard because it will sound casual on the surface, yet underneath it could carry the weight of everything they have been afraid to say. Before that moment arrives, remember one important truth: you should never have to abandon your self-respect to prove that you deserve love. Your soulmate connection should not require you to constantly chase, beg, or decode someone who refuses to communicate. The strongest version of this story is not about desperately holding on to another person. It is about two people choosing each other with clarity. And that is why the next chapter matters so much. Something may soon become obvious that was previously hidden, not because of a supernatural sign, but because someone's actions finally become impossible to misunderstand. The person who once seemed uncertain may begin showing consistent interest. The person who rarely initiated may start reaching out. The person who kept conversations surface level may suddenly want to know everything about you. And when those changes happen, do not rush to create a fantasy around them. Let their actions speak. Give the connection room to reveal its true character. Because sometimes the most beautiful soulmate story does not begin when someone says, "I have been waiting for you." It begins when two people realize, almost at the same time, "I do not want to keep pretending this connection does not matter." And there is one final piece still hidden beneath everything you have heard so far. Your soulmate may have already imagined what it would feel like to have you permanently present in their life. The question is not whether that thought has crossed their mind. The question is what they are finally going to do about it. Something has shifted inside your soulmate, and you may notice it first through the smallest change. They may suddenly become more intentional with their words, more present when you speak, or more interested in the details of your everyday life. What once felt like casual curiosity may begin feeling personal. They may ask about something you mentioned long ago, remember a detail you never expected them to remember, or bring up a moment that you had already placed somewhere in the past. That is where this story becomes powerful, because sometimes a person reveals their feelings without ever saying the words directly. Your soulmate may be trying to understand whether you still have space in your heart for them. They may be wondering if the door between you is still open. And perhaps they have been waiting for some indication that they would not be rejected if they stepped closer. But there is something you need to understand before you interpret every little action. A meaningful connection is not built from guesses. It is built from mutual effort, honesty, respect, and consistency. So watch what happens next. If they genuinely want to become closer, their behavior will gradually become clearer. They will not simply appear when they are lonely and disappear when life becomes complicated. They will begin making room for you. They will want to know what makes you happy, what you fear, what you dream about, and what kind of future you actually want. And the moment they begin asking those questions, something important has already changed. They are no longer simply thinking about who you are today. They may be starting to wonder what life could look like if you were part of their tomorrow. Here is where your soulmate story takes a deeper turn, because the person you are thinking about may be confronting an internal realization they have avoided for longer than you know. They may have compared new people to you without admitting it. They may have experienced conversations that seemed perfectly fine but somehow lacked the emotional depth they felt around you. They may have tried to move forward, only to discover that moving forward does not automatically erase a connection that genuinely affected them. And perhaps what they miss is not one specific moment, but the feeling of being understood. Maybe you noticed their mood without asking too many questions. Maybe you could make them laugh when they were having a difficult day. Maybe you never demanded that they become someone else before you accepted them. Those things can stay in a person's memory far longer than grand romantic gestures. And now they may be realizing that what they once considered ordinary was actually rare. This realization can create a strange kind of courage. A person begins to understand that waiting forever does not protect them from disappointment. It only guarantees that they never discover what could have happened. That is why your soulmate may be moving toward a conversation they have postponed. They may finally want to clear up something that remained unfinished between you. They may want to explain why they acted distant. They may want to tell you what they were thinking during a period when you assumed they were thinking about nothing at all. And when that conversation comes, listen carefully. Not because every word will magically prove anything, but because honest communication can reveal whether this connection has the foundation to become something real. Then comes a moment that could completely change the emotional atmosphere between you. Imagine your soulmate standing on the edge of saying something they have rehearsed privately many times. They know what they want to say, but they are afraid that once the words leave their mouth, everything becomes real. Maybe they have typed a message and deleted it. Maybe they have opened your conversation several times without sending anything. Maybe they have started a sentence in their head and stopped because they could not find the courage to finish it. And the sentence may not even be a dramatic confession. It could be something much more revealing. Do you ever think about what would happen if we tried again? Or, what do you actually feel about me now? Or even, have you ever wondered where this could go? Questions like these are powerful because they are not really questions about the past. They are questions about possibility. Your soulmate may be testing whether there is still a future available between you. And if you have been waiting for clarity, this could be the kind of moment that finally creates it. But do not let excitement make you overlook what matters most. Words can open a door, but actions determine whether someone truly walks through it. If they say they care, watch whether they make time. If they say they miss you, watch whether they make an effort to reconnect. If they say they want something serious, watch whether their choices support those words. Because the soulmate connection worth holding onto is not the one that keeps you trapped in endless uncertainty. It is the one where both people eventually become brave enough to make their intentions visible. And now the most unexpected possibility enters the story. Your soulmate may be closer to making that choice than you realize, but they may first need to see whether you have changed too. They may remember an older version of you, the version that accepted confusion, waited too long, overthought every message, or gave too much without receiving enough in return. But perhaps you are not that person anymore. Perhaps you have learned that love should feel meaningful without requiring you to lose yourself. Perhaps you now understand that someone can be important to you without being allowed to control your peace. And that transformation could be exactly what changes the dynamic between you. When your soulmate notices that you are no longer desperately searching for validation, they may see you differently. Not because you are playing a game, but because you have finally understood your own value. You are not waiting for someone to complete you. You are becoming someone who can share a complete life with another person. That distinction matters. And it could lead your soulmate to realize something they never expected: if they want a place beside you, they cannot simply return with old behavior and expect the same access to your heart. They have to show up differently too. They have to communicate. They have to be consistent. They have to make their intentions clear. And that is why the next stage of this story may feel so different from everything before it. You are not simply waiting for your soulmate to arrive anymore. You are watching to see whether they are ready to meet you at the level of love you now know you deserve. And when their next move finally happens, it may reveal whether this connection was only a beautiful possibility, or the beginning of something neither of you can honestly ignore anymore.